This changes everything. Toyota has just handed Haas a software weapon that could turn Formula One's smallest operation into the grid's nastiest surprise. This is not another wing, floor edge, or package held together by hope and tape. It is a Toyota-backed simulator system designed to help Haas predict setups, test development ideas, and arrive at circuits with fewer blind guesses. Better still, the FIA cannot outlaw it because simulation is already part of modern Formula One development. Haas has spent years borrowing tools, sharing facilities, and behaving like a tenant in Ferrari's house. Now Toyota is helping it build a control room of its own. Is this clever progress, or has a technical partnership created a loophole rivals will hate? Subscribe now, because we are exposing what this system changes, why Ferrari should feel uncomfortable, and how Toyota may have installed Haas's most savage upgrade without touching the car. The important word here is correlation. A simulator is only useful when its virtual vehicle behaves like the real machine. If the digital model predicts huge rear grip, but the actual car starts sliding like a shopping trolley at 280 kilometers per hour, the simulator becomes an extremely expensive video game. Toyota's job is helping Haas close that gap between calculation and reality. Every suspension response, aerodynamic load, tire temperature change, and energy deployment decision must feel believable. Once those elements match the circuit, Haas can begin extracting answers before the garage doors even open. Until now, Haas has depended heavily on Ferrari's simulator facilities. That arrangement gave the American outfit access to excellent equipment, but it also created obvious limitations. Simulator time had to be arranged around another organization's priorities. Haas engineers needed to travel to Maranello, taking key personnel away from Banbury and adding another exhausting journey to a calendar already packed with races. Most importantly, Ferrari was always going to put Ferrari first. That is not sabotage. That is common sense. Nobody invites a tenant into the kitchen and lets them choose dinner before the homeowner. Toyota changes that relationship completely. The Banbury simulator gives Haas its own development schedule, its own operational rhythm, and far greater freedom to react. If Friday practice exposes a balance problem, engineers back at the factory can load the circuit model, reproduce the conditions, and investigate alternative setups. They can adjust ride height, suspension stiffness, differential settings, brake balance, and energy deployment without sacrificing precious laps on the actual car. Results can then be sent to the track before the next session. That is where software stops being background machinery and starts becoming a competitive weapon. Think about how many times Haas has arrived at a weekend looking reasonably quick, only to disappear after one setup change. Mechanics adjust the platform to cure understeer, then suddenly the rear tires begin overheating. Engineers lower the vehicle for downforce, but the floor becomes unstable over bumps. One solution creates two fresh problems, and by qualifying, the drivers are effectively negotiating with a machine suffering an identity crisis. Better simulation does not guarantee perfection. However, it can expose those negative loops earlier, when the consequences exist only inside a computer instead of on the timing screen. This matters even more under the 2026 regulations. Formula One now combines active aerodynamics with a much larger electrical contribution from the power unit. Drivers and engineers must understand how the vehicle changes between its high downforce cornering configuration and low drag straight line mode. Energy harvesting, battery deployment, brake feel, and aerodynamic balance are interconnected. Get one calculation wrong, and the driver can arrive at the next braking zone with the wrong balance, insufficient electrical power, or a car transitioning between modes, with all the grace of a wardrobe falling down the stairs. A Driver in the Loop simulator allows Esteban Ocon and Oliver Bearman to experience those interactions repeatedly. They can practice energy management procedures, compare control settings, and tell engineers whether a theoretically faster configuration is actually drivable. That last point is crucial. A computer can produce a setup that looks magnificent on a graph, while demanding 3 hands, supernatural reflexes, and a personal agreement with the laws of physics. The driver exposes that nonsense. Toyota is therefore giving Haas more than software. It is helping create a feedback loop connecting the driver, performance engineers, designers, and trackside operation. What would you do if you were Ayao Komatsu? Would you spend heavily chasing one dramatic floor upgrade, or invest in a system that could improve every upgrade arriving afterward? That is the intelligence behind this decision. A new wing might deliver a few hundredths at one type of circuit. Strong simulation can influence setup, development direction, driver preparation, and race execution across an entire season. It is not as photogenic as carbon fiber. Nobody gathers outside a factory to watch a server calculate tire temperatures. Yet championships are increasingly shaped by invisible tools long before television cameras start recording. Now we need to address the explosive part of the title. Is the FIA genuinely powerless? Not completely. Formula One's governing body still controls the financial regulations, aerodynamic testing restrictions, track testing, and software used in the race vehicle. Haas cannot use Toyota's resources as an unlimited development laboratory while pretending those costs do not exist. Relevant work must be reported correctly, and restricted aerodynamic development remains restricted regardless of whose logo appears above the simulator door. If Toyota provided prohibited assistance or hidden expenditure, the FIA could investigate. This is Formula One, not a tax-free technology buffet. However, the Federation cannot ban Haas from owning a competent simulator simply because rivals dislike the outcome. Driver-in-the-loop development is normal, legal, and already used throughout the grid. Toyota is not secretly installing traction control, automated steering, or a magic application labeled "Press here for podium." The savage element is that Haas is finally acquiring infrastructure other teams have enjoyed for years. Officials can enforce the boundaries, but they cannot order an ambitious outfit to remain technologically underdeveloped. In that specific sense, the FIA is powerless to protect richer rivals from Haas becoming smarter. There is also an important separation between simulator running and testing of previous cars, commonly called TPC. Toyota helped Haas establish its first serious TPC program, allowing older Formula One machinery to be used for driver and personnel development. Yet the regulations explicitly prevent those runs from becoming disguised tests for the current championship car. Haas cannot bolt tomorrow's floor onto yesterday's chassis, cover it with sensors, and call the entire operation driver training. Current car development through TPC is restricted. The FIA anticipated that trick because Formula One teams would exploit a misplaced comma if it promised half a tenth. And this is where Ferrari should start feeling uncomfortable. Haas will continue using Ferrari power unit and gearbox technology, so this is not an immediate divorce. Yet the simulator reduces one of the American team's practical dependencies on Maranello. Previously, Ferrari was supplier, technical partner, landlord, and occasionally the responsible adult holding the instruction manual. Toyota is now building an alternative support structure around Haas. One connection does not disappear, but another becomes stronger. In Formula One politics, independence rarely arrives with a press release. It grows quietly until somebody realizes the balance of power has already moved. Ferrari may publicly welcome anything that improves a customer team. Better results from a Ferrari-powered outfit can reflect positively on the manufacturer, and Haas remains useful as a commercial and technical partner. Behind closed doors, however, Maranello will understand the long-term danger. Toyota has returned to Formula One branding without buying an entry, building a power unit, or accepting the full humiliation potential of running a works team. It can learn how modern F1 operates through Haas, develop personnel, evaluate drivers, and expand its influence gradually. That is an extraordinarily careful return for a company that remembers how expensive failure can become. Toyota raced as a full constructor between 2002 and 2009, spent enormous sums, and never won a Grand Prix. That history still hangs over this partnership. The manufacturer does not need another corporate adventure where expectations reach the moon while results remain parked behind a Renault. Working with Haas offers a safer route. Toyota can contribute resources, gain knowledge, and rebuild Formula One capability without immediately promising a championship. If the alliance succeeds, it can deepen the relationship. If it struggles, executives can describe the project as personnel development and leave without an entire factory becoming a monument to disappointing quarterly meetings. That does not mean a takeover is confirmed. Komatsu has repeatedly framed the collaboration around developing people and creating a more competitive organization. Toyota has not announced a Formula One power unit, and speculation should not be presented as fact merely because it makes a louder thumbnail. Nevertheless, the direction deserves attention. Toyota became Haas's title partner for 2026 after beginning the technical alliance in 2024. The TPC program expanded. The Banbury simulator followed. Each step increased Toyota's visibility and practical involvement. Perhaps this is only cooperation. But Formula One history teaches us that manufacturers rarely increase commitment because they enjoy collecting paddock passes. The real gain should emerge gradually. First, Haas can improve driver familiarization and procedural work. Next comes more dependable baseline setup preparation. Engineers can then use the simulator during race weekends, provided the model reproduces current conditions accurately. Over time, development choices become sharper because virtual experiments reveal which ideas deserve expensive manufacturing. That sequence matters under a cost cap. Producing a failed component costs money twice. Once to create it, and again through the opportunity lost by not building something useful. A better decision before manufacturing can be worth more than one spectacular upgrade after months of waste. You also have to think about tire degradation. Haas has experienced seasons where qualifying speed looked respectable, only for race pace to collapse as the tires overheated, or the aerodynamic platform became unstable in traffic. Tire behavior is notoriously difficult to model because temperature, pressure, surface condition, driving style, fuel load, and aero balance interact constantly. No simulator perfectly recreates that complexity. Still, improved modeling can help drivers compare techniques and allow engineers to understand which setup direction protects the rubber. If Toyota helps Haas stop turning medium tires into chewing gum, that alone could rescue valuable championship points. Behrman may benefit enormously. A young driver needs laps, but modern Formula One provides very little unrestricted testing. Simulator sessions let him rehearse unfamiliar circuits, explore setup changes, and refine communication with engineers without risking a multi-million-dollar crash. Ocon brings more experience and can act as a valuable reference when judging whether the virtual car behaves credibly. Their feedback styles will differ, which is useful. If both drivers report the same weakness, engineers gain confidence that the model has a genuine problem. If their comments conflict, Haas must determine whether the issue is setup, technique, or somebody being dramatically French. But here is the savage question rivals cannot avoid. What happens if Haas finally becomes efficient and properly equipped at the same time? The organization already understands how to stretch limited resources. It has survived without the enormous infrastructure considered essential elsewhere. Add Toyota's support, an internal simulator, deeper personnel training, and greater operational independence, and the old excuses begin disappearing. That raises expectations, of course. Once Haas owns better tools, fans will no longer accept every poor weekend as the unavoidable struggle of Formula One's smallest team. Investment brings opportunity, but it also removes hiding places. Fans should still remain suspicious of the FIA's Powerless claim if it is interpreted as a lawless loophole. There is no evidence that Haas has installed forbidden software on its Formula One car. The governing body can audit financial compliance and enforce testing restrictions. Furthermore, Toyota's involvement does not allow unlimited computer processing for aerodynamic development outside the established framework. The actual story is more subtle and, in some ways, more threatening. Haas appears to be using a legitimate partnership to correct a structural disadvantage. No scandal is required. Sometimes, the most brutal competitive move is reading the regulations correctly and investing accordingly. That distinction matters, because real Formula One politics are dramatic enough without inventing sabotage. The FIA may dislike a future arrangement if it blurs the boundary between supplier, sponsor, and technical contributor, but dislike is not a regulation. Unless Haas crosses a defined line, officials cannot punish the team for receiving expertise or building infrastructure. Rivals can complain, demand clarification, and suddenly discover a passionate concern for competitive fairness. Their outrage will become especially entertaining if Haas starts qualifying ahead of them. Principals in the paddock often arrive approximately 3 minutes after somebody loses a grid position. If you are not subscribed, this is exactly the kind of technical power struggle you will miss, while everyone else argues only about lap times. The next phase will reveal whether the simulator correlates, whether the drivers trust it, and whether Toyota increases its involvement. Those answers could determine if this alliance remains a development partnership or becomes something far more serious. There is delicious irony here. Formula One spent years treating Haas's outsourced model as either clever efficiency or evidence that the team lacked seriousness. Now Toyota is helping fill the missing internal capabilities, and the same paddock may complain that the partnership is too powerful. Which version would rivals prefer? The underfunded Haas they could mock, or the ambitious Haas they might have to race? Competition sounds wonderful until the supposedly weaker opponent develops teeth. Then everyone reaches for the rulebook, a microphone, and the expression of somebody who has just discovered an international conspiracy inside a simulator room. The pressure now falls on Haas to deliver. Toyota can provide support, software expertise, personnel, and infrastructure, but it cannot drive the vehicle from a control center. Engineers must convert simulation into usable setup choices. Behrman and Ocon must provide precise feedback. Designers must create upgrades worth testing. Trackside staff must react without panicking when reality disagrees with prediction. If those pieces connect, the simulator becomes a multiplier. If they do not, Haas will own an expensive room where drivers practice being disappointed before traveling to the circuit and experiencing the premium live version. The software battle has therefore only begun. Haas must prove the virtual numbers survive contact with real asphalt, unpredictable weather, tire degradation, and two drivers demanding different things from the same vehicle. If correlation arrives, the midfield could face a nasty surprise. If it fails, Toyota's Savage upgrade will become another very expensive screen, displaying beautifully rendered disappointment. Now pick your side. Is Toyota simply giving Haas the equipment every serious Formula One team should possess, or are we watching the first quiet stage of a much larger Japanese return? Tell me in the comments, subscribe before the next paddock bombshell lands, and remember this moment. The next time Haas suddenly arrives with a perfect baseline setup, rivals may blame the driver, the tires, or the circuit. We will know the attack started inside a simulator at Banbury,